Well, predicting macroeconomics is always difficult, and one should assign probabilities to these things. Ironically, I did last year. People asked me what I think about the economy. I said, well, I think we might enter a recession in approximately spring of 2022. Now, the thing is that recessions are not necessarily a bad thing. I've now been through a few of them, and what tends to happen is if you have a boom that goes on for too long, you get misallocation of capital. It starts raining money on fools, basically. It's like any dumb thing gets money, and I'm sure you've seen a few of those. So at some point, it gets just out of control, and you just have a misallocation of human capital, where people are doing things that are silly and not useful to their fellow human beings. And then those companies, there needs to be sort of an economic enema, if you will, to have everyone sort of shift uncomfortably in their seats. I mean, listen, it's got alliteration. Eventually, the economic enema does its job. It clears out the pipes, if you will, and sort of the bullshit companies go bankrupt, and the ones that are doing useful products are prosperous. And there's certainly a lesson here that if one is making useful product and has a company that makes sense, make sure you're not running things too close to the edge from a capital standpoint. They've got some capital reserves to last through irrational times. Because in the past, when there's been a recession, it has gone, it's amazing, it's flipped like a light switch. I mean, David, do you remember this from the PayPal, ex-PayPal days, when we raised $100 million in March of 2000, and we had, the demand was so high, we had people like VCs, like just literally without even a term sheet, wiring money into our account. They literally were like sleuth out our bank account number and wire money. And we're like, where'd this come from? And it's like, so it was like literally fire hosing money in March of 2000. And then in April 2000, the market went into free fall, and it went from raising money was trivial to even good companies could not raise money in a month. So it's just important to bear in mind like that, PayPal almost went bankrupt in 2000, came close. But thankfully, we'd raised that $100 million in March 2000, without which we would be in game over, basically. And we kind of saw it coming. So it's like we got the ex-Confinity merger done in like 3 weeks and raised $100 million, because we were like, we see this coming to an end pretty soon. And then a month later, it was like a nightmare, basically. And anyway, so it's just important to make sure you're a healthy company, you got some capital to get through things. And then what's your costs? And it is a recession, which more likely than not, it is a recession. I'm not saying it is, but it probably is. Then just watch your cash flow and get to positive cash flow as soon as you can. But I think we probably are in a recession, and that recession will get worse. These things pass, and then there will be boom times again. So it'll probably be some tough going for, I don't know, a year, maybe 12 to 18 months is usually the amount of time that it takes for a correction to happen. The United States be like the destination for the world's best talent, like a pro sports team. If you want to win the league and you want the best players on your team, there are obviously a lot of very talented people born in the United States. But if you could add a few aces from outside the country to the team, you're going to win the league. And here's the thing. Those aces actually want to work for your team. They don't want to compete against you. They want to win. To be on Team America. We have to like fight them off to not be on Team America. That's the crazy thing. And so it's like, if you got some aces that are the difference between winning and losing, we should be really recruiting them. Like you'd recruit like a star basketball player or football player, active recruiting. Just like if you're a company that wants to succeed, you actively recruit the best talent. And that's the way to win. And if that stops happening, America will stop winning. Reality is like anyone who wants to work hard and do useful things, and we want in the United States. And it's not just people who are sort of intellectually strong, but it's just anyone with a strong work ethic. If they're coming from Mexico, or if they're coming from Europe or China, wherever, if they're like going to come here and crank hard and contribute more than they take, hell yeah. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Have you been disappointed in the similarities between Biden and Trump on this?
Man, it's hard to tell what Biden's doing, to be totally frank. It's like the path to power is the path to the teleprompter. Because then he just reads the teleprompter. I do feel like if somebody would accidentally lean on the teleprompter, it's going to be like Anchorman. It's going to be like you ASDF 1, 2, 3 type of thing. It doesn't seem to get a lot done. And whatever the Trump administration, leaving Trump aside, there were a lot of people in the administration who were effective at getting things done. So this administration seems just to not have like the drive to get shit done. That's my impression. Definitely need to fix immigration policy. Like we had COVID, which was an issue. And so that was like one reason to like clamp down on it. Now we moved on. And so let's just make sure we're getting top talent in the United States. And really, I'd say broadly, it's anyone who wants to work their ass off and contribute more than they take to the economy. Like that's just necessarily going to make for a stronger, better society in America.
Bezos's tweet back and forth with Biden was talking about inflation, but then he correlated that to taxing corporations. And Bezos said, this is misinformation and disinformation, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think about that whole exchange then back and forth?
The obvious reason for inflation is that the government printed more money than it had, obviously. So it's like the government can't just issue checks far in excess of revenue without there being inflation. Velocity of money held constant. So unless there's something would change with velocity of money, but it's just, look, if the federal government writes checks, they never bounce. So that is effectively creation of more dollars. And if there are more dollars created, then the increase in the goods and services output of the economy, then you have inflation. Again, velocity of money held constant. So this is just very basic. This is not like super complicated. And if the government could just issue massive amounts of money and deficits didn't matter, then why don't we just make the deficit 100 times bigger? And the answer is you can't, because it will basically turn the dollar into something that is worthless. And various countries have tried this experiment multiple times. It's not like, oh, I wonder what happens if this is done.
Yeah.
Have you seen Venezuela? Like the poor people of Venezuela have been just run roughshod by their government. So obviously you can't simply create money. The true economy is very important. Like the true economy is the output of goods and services. It's not money. It's literally what is the output of goods and services. Money is simply a way for us to, or anything that you call money is a way for us to conveniently exchange goods and services without having to engage in barter, and also to shift obligations in time. Those are the two reasons that you have money. It's really it's a database. Well, money is an information system for labor allocation and for exchange of goods and services and for translating in time. And the quality of that information is a function of, basically you can apply information theory to money. And I think it helps explain why one money system is better than another. And so just like an internet connection, you'd want something that's high bandwidth, low latency and jitter, and is not dropping packets, does not have a lot of errors in the system. And the same is true with money. You want, and really like you said, what did PayPal really do? That it helped improve the bandwidth, the speed at which money could move. Instead of mailing checks back and forth, which amazingly, that was what people did in 2000, you could now do real-time exchange of money, and now you could ship your goods immediately instead of mailing a check and waiting for the bank to clear the check. So the ultimate thing with PayPal, or if it sort of was in the X.com, sort of went less sort of niche payments and more sort of broad financial, would be to simply disintermediate all the heterogeneous COBOL databases out there running on mainframes doing batch processing, and have a single real-time system that was secure and not batch processing. And so it would just be, from an information standpoint, more efficient. And eventually all the batch processing COBOL mainframes operated by the banks would cease to exist.
What have you learned about China?
Sure. I'd say like China, first of all, is not monolithic. It's not like everything is not some plot by the Chinese government. There are many factions within China that compete vigorously within China. And perhaps most important is that there's just a tremendous number of hardworking, smart people in China who want to get ahead and get things done. And they're not complacent, and they're not entitled, and they want to get things done, and they want to make a better life for themselves. What we're going to see with China for the first time that anyone can remember who is alive is an economy that is twice the size of the US, possibly 3 times the size of the US. It's going to be very weird living in that world.